Conversations with the inspiring minds, using design and creativity towards social change. This is Design for the People with Greg Bunbury.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Greg Bunbury, and on this show, I'll be speaking to the designers, artists, creative thinkers, and activists using their skills to tackle social issues, uplift communities, and make a difference in the world. And today's guest is a rising talent in the design world, Jahnavi. Jahnavi is a recent graduate from Central St. Martin's in graphic communication design, and her work has already caught the attention of the design world. Her practice is built around influencing social attitudes towards groups of underrepresented communities. She is a winner of the Nova Unilever Unstereotype Award 2020 and the CSM Deans Collection Award 2020. She recently exhibited at the Saatchi Gallery as part of the London Grads Now exhibition, which ran in September of this year. Jahnavi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
No, you're very, very welcome. I'm thrilled to be speaking with you because your work just really, really caught my eye. And I think it's so rare for such a young designer to be so assured and so confident in their use of typography, graphic communication, but also your politics, your perspective, and your point of view, which, can take designers decades to develop, and you're already out the gate, knocking out of the park. So what would you say the ethos of your work in general is, or what do you hope to achieve with the stuff that you're doing?
Well, through creating work, I always want to educate people and inspire. I feel like throughout my uni experience, so when I've created work and when I received briefs, I feel like I was a lot more engaged with the work when it was something that I really wanted to do. At the end of it, I just really want people to become more knowledgeable, because I feel like as a designer, I have the power to be able to incorporate different elements and create something that people can understand and create messages that can be easily communicated. So I feel like it's the best way to educate and inform people through these methods.
And have you always felt that way about design, or is that something that you kind of came to the more you did the work?
I feel like it's definitely something that came with more too, because like I said, I'm a lot more engaged when I'm making work, because throughout uni, when I would have people in crits reflect on my work, I would know that I would feel a lot more inspired and happy about the work that I was creating when people would ask me questions and they would say that they have learned something. So if people can see my work and they can begin to ask questions as opposed to just viewing it and taking it as it is, I just want to encourage and start conversation.
Yeah, I hear that. So one of the things that's also really interesting about your work is your use of analog practices. Now, in the design world, analog is pretty much unheard of these days, when everything starts and ends with a computer. So What initially drew you to incorporate analog practices to your work?
So initially at university at Central St. Martin's, we have a lot of access to different studios like printmaking and letterpress. So I feel like that was the best opportunity for me to explore. And then whilst I was doing work, I looked into the arts and crafts movement. So I looked at the way that the worker is involved with the work and how that directly affects the outcome. So if the worker feels more involved with the work that they're creating along the line of production, then it's more likely to have a more beneficial effect on the worker's life, quality of life, and also the value of what you make is a lot more. And also I just really enjoy working with my hands and trying out new, like feeling tactile material. I just really enjoy it.
And there's also a cultural element to connecting with work in this way, connecting to work on the basis of craft and these analog practices. How can these techniques, such as printmaking and quilting, help connect designers and creatives to deeper cultural narratives?
I think it can really help in terms of it is the message. So the quote, the medium is the message. I really think if you do something through these methods, for example, if you were to do printmaking or letterpress, you can look at the history that has with protest art or different campaigns. So I feel like it creates a much more stronger message. And then with the quilting, obviously it has its history within America, where enslaved African American women were made to create quilts. I feel like through me creating that work again, and through me actually doing this stuff by hand, it's a lot more emotional. So I feel like my emotional labor is a lot higher than opposed to me just producing something on a screen. I feel like, yeah, it really does affect the value.
Yeah, no, totally. I think one of the things that I'm very aware of at the moment is for designers and illustrators and creatives, especially those of color who are producing their own work, there seems to be a tendency to produce work via sort of print on demand. And these companies like Printful and others where, you know, you can get your design printed on a mug or on a t-shirt. And in some ways it kind of brings down the value of the work. And I think so much in the work that we do is determined by the methodology of how we do it. The value is in how it's made. That's as important as the work itself. Would you say that's true of your work too?
I feel definitely, especially with the quote I made for Black British History, I did an investigation into Stuart Hall's representation theory. So I really dug deep into looking the ways in which something is presented and how that affects its meaning. So in terms of me creating it by hand and the typography that I use and all of the different elements that come together to affect the way that users interpret the meaning. So I feel like definitely the medium definitely has an effect on the message.
That's amazing. You mentioned Stuart Hall there. Were there other kind of writers and historians that you drew on for the context in your work?
Yeah, I looked at Bell Hooks, and she has a book about race and representation. But that book isn't more centered towards media culture and like films, but it did really help in terms of understanding the ways in which representations are created and also looking within our own biases that Black people may input in their own work, but they don't actually realize it because we've kind of been taught these different values, and we need to realize that we actually need to take a step back and reflect on the work that we're creating and how this does influence the representations of Black people in particular.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because just like lots of writers like David Odsuga, Peter Fryer, there's so many thought and opinion on the basis of how difficult or how challenging it is to be in Britain, but much harder to be of Britain. So I feel like your work like yours is a wider contextualization of Black British history as part of British history rather than this kind of separate entity. And part of that story is expanding the history beyond Windrush. Which brings me on to the work you did for our Black Outdoor Art Initiative, which was an extension of your quilting project. And at its core, I believe that it's challenging that single story. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel that there was a single story that suggests that Black people had only arrived in the UK after the Windrush, as there was the great wave of immigration. And that's when the Commonwealth Act came into place during like the 1960s. But I wanted to highlight the fact that there were actually Black people in Britain before that. So during the 1800s and the 1700s, there were Black people in the UK, and we have been here for a while. We're not new. We're not a new people. We have been in Britain and we have been contributing to British society for decades.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we've been part of the British story since the 3rd century.
Exactly. With
Black British communities springing up as early as the 1500s. So in terms of the billboard you did for us, it expands on maybe some lesser known figures of Black British history, people like Mary Prince and Oduwada Equiano, Billy Waters. What was the process of kind of selecting these individuals?
Well, at first I began just looking online for different names of people, but I figured that I didn't want it to be tokenistic, so I didn't want to just highlight Black people for the sake of it and to just show that, okay, we were here. But I began to look at Black people that were actually maybe not had more prominence, but maybe Black people that did something within British society. So there was Fanny Eaton, she was a model. There's Pablo Fank, he was a Victorian circus owner. But then I also kind of wanted to highlight the fact that although these people are although I have the names of these people, there are still names of other people that obviously will go unrecognized, but they still have the same value and they're still worthy of being shown. But the fact that their lives aren't documented kind of so the fact that these lives aren't documented throughout the history kind of highlights all the fact that it's never been seen as worthy. So I wanted to counter that and make it actually worthy and present it in a way that makes it unable to ignore, because we haven't been taught these names before. So now is the time.
Yeah. And what I really like about it is typically when we look at Black British figures in history, they're often either characterized as victims of slavery or beneficiaries of abolition. But these characters, the figures that you've chosen to represent, are entrepreneurs and entertainers and business people and models. And it just kind of gives such a wider breadth to our culture and our history and kind of moves it from that single story. What would you say would be, so for creatives following in your footsteps or aspiring creatives who want to do the kind of work that you're doing now, what would you say are the steps that can be taken towards doing this kind of work?
I would say definitely just go and continue to do the work that you really want to do, because for this project itself, during the beginning at university, because we had to write our own briefs, I was really conflicted in terms of if I actually wanted to do this or if I should do something that would be a bit more palatable to the university and to the assessors. But I feel like there was really something within me and a really strong desire to do it. And I feel like that is there for a reason. So I feel like definitely do not ignore what you're passionate about, because often it's what you're passionate about that will turn out best because you're really engaged with the work. I would say definitely look at the things that you're engaged with and the things that you genuinely enjoy doing, and that will better the quality of the work and also your own creative process, because everything leads on to each other. So the more engaged you are, the better the outcome, essentially.
Yeah, and to add to that, one of the things that I can say, especially for aspiring creatives, is that when you come out of university or when you begin your career, you'll hear people tell you what or advise you on what should be in your portfolio and how you should present yourself. And normally it's away from your cultural identity. And what happens is you become, especially in graphic communication design, you get used to working for agencies, you get used to working for clients, and there's a specific way that people work. And what happens is over time, your work becomes more generic and less particular to you, because you're just going, okay, right, these are the fonts that brands and clients use. These are this is the types of layouts that companies use. And the further you go down that pathway, you become less of an individual. And for Black creatives and creators of color, that actually diminishes your value. So it actually stops you from the thing that makes you unique. And when you become generic, it becomes a lot harder. I mean, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, but it becomes much harder because, especially in industries where there's such low representation, if everything is equal and there's no uniqueness and there's no story to your work, it becomes very easy to turn you into a commodity and then kind of put you to one side. Do you feel like you have a good handle on the balance of your kind of personal work and kind of the more commercial work that you can expect to be doing?
I feel so, yeah, because the work that I've been doing since I've left uni, I've joined Somerset House as a young producer, and the project that we're doing right now is about Black British history. And even within that, I was looking at presenting ideas that aren't as known, so lesser known narratives. So I feel like in terms of the research and the ideas, I feel like my uniqueness is still there. But I haven't really been doing that much stuff for different agencies since. But I feel like I have been approached by other people to create work, but I have turned it down because it's not stuff that I want to do. Because like you said, I'm aware that, first of all, if I don't want to do something, then I know the outcome won't be as great because I'm not actually emotionally engaged with it. So I don't want that to diminish my own value of work. But also about me not wanting to do the work because it's just not my style. And I feel like I don't want to have to alter my style in order to fit in. I'd much rather just do freelance or just create my own projects where I can see myself in the work.
Yeah, it's really important at the beginning of your career that you set your values and that you determine where your lines are and what you're willing to do. And it's really important that you do that early in your career because you can set your own pathway rather than being in a situation where you're much further in and you find yourself in a compromising position, or you're working for clients who operate in ways that you don't agree with or in industries you don't agree with. By setting your values out early, I think you have a much stronger chance of having a consistent and rewarding career. That's fantastic. What's next for you?
Well, at the moment, I'm kind of taking a break from uni. I feel like even since I finished uni, I've just still been working nonstop, but I want to take a break. And then I want to go back to the Black Culture Archives, and I want to continue digging and finding and experimenting with different methods and ways to tell stories. I just need to find it. Whenever I go there, I'm always overwhelmed, and there's just so much that I want to, like, oh my God, I want people to know this. Because when I come out and I meet up with my friends, I'm like, oh, did you know this? Did you know that? So I feel like I'm just going to find a way to put it all in my brain and put it back out in a creative way.
When you're doing that, when you're going through the archives and when you're looking for inspiration, is there a part of you, does it always feel rewarding and joyful? Or is there a part of you where you're looking through kind of painful histories and having to take that on?
I feel like it is rewarding, but there is definitely is a negative toll in terms of not only the fact that the realization that there are these rich stories that I have never heard about and that have been kept from me, like, purposely, but then also, there are some stories that are quite harrowing, and I feel like it does take an emotional toll to actually read it and process it. But then I look at the positive things and then I realize, well, this is what happened, and I still feel like people should know.
Yeah, I mean, I think your work is really valuable and really vital in helping us recontextualize those histories and present a wider view of Black British history and of British history, because, you know, the story of Black Britain is the story of Britain, and the story of Britain is the story of global history. So it's really important that we are able to take control and shape those narratives. So I'm glad that young creatives like yourself are out there really leading this good fight. And it's amazing. I look forward to seeing more from you.
Thank you. I look forward to creating and educating and inspiring.
Where can the people find you? What's your Insta handle?
My Instagram is JAHNAVINNISS. So it's just my name.
Okay,
but
great.
With one I that joins in the middle.
Okay, cool. We'll add all those links in the show notes for everybody to come find you. Thanks for joining me. It's been amazing. And thank you for the billboard. I look forward to working with you again in the new year. Yeah, it's just great work. Absolutely great work.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. My thanks again to Jahnavi for joining me in conversation. Her work makes for a compelling example of what happens when designers experiment beyond the mediums we're used to explore cultural narratives through methodology and practice. Join me again next week for more inspiring talks with the creatives working towards social change. For full episode details and show notes, visit bunbury.co/podcast. That's bunbury.co/podcast. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you soon.
You've been listening to Design for the People with Greg Bunbury.